I froze as Officer Derek Holt's hand clamped onto Jamal's arm, my nephew's eyes widening in panic, his 12-year-old frame stiffening under the grip of a man whose badge gleamed with authority but whose sneer screamed prejudice, and in that heartbeat, the world narrowed to the 5-foot leash connecting me to Valor, my German shepherd, whose 80-pound body tensed beside me in Zilker Park, Austin, where we'd come for a simple walk, not a showdown. I'm Marcus Reynolds, a black man pushing 60, once a Navy SEAL K-9 handler who'd seen deserts and danger, but nothing burned like this moment, where my nephew's fear mirrored my own buried memories of being judged by the color of my skin. Derek, tall and lean with a smirk that could cut glass, yanked Jamal closer, saying, "You kids think you can strut around here with that dog like you own the place?" His voice carried the weight of assumption, the kind I'd faced too often, where a black man with a military-grade leash was a threat, not a veteran. Valor's smart collar, hidden under his fur, blinked faintly, recording every sound, a trick I'd learned after years of needing proof to exist in spaces like this. Jamal's voice cracked, "I didn't do nothing, sir," and my heart twisted, not just for him but for every kid who had to learn this lesson too soon. The other officers. Mike, stocky and loud, and Ellen, quiet but watching with a body cam, closed in, Mike tapping Valor's leash, saying, "This ain't your average mutt. Who'd you borrow it from, old man?" The word old landed like a jab, but I let it slide, my training kicking in, the same calm that kept me alive in Iraq, where Valor's predecessor had saved my squad by standing still when chaos screamed. I adjusted my grip on the leash, my journal tucked in my pocket, where I'd written last night about wanting Jamal to grow up free from this weight. Ellen's eyes flicked to Valor, who hadn't moved, his ears tilted just an inch, signaling he'd clocked their intent, and she muttered, "That dog's too calm. Freaks me out." I wanted to laugh, but the anger simmering in my chest held it back, anger not just at them but at a world that made my nephew a target. A jogger nearby slowed, phone raised, and a dad with a stroller hit record on a community app I'd helped build, one that alerted locals to incidents like this, already pinging dozens of phones. Derek's smirk grew, his hand still on Jamal, who looked at me, whispering, "Uncle Marcus, are we in trouble?" I shook my head, my voice low, "No, son, we're just living." But living felt like a fight when Derek scoffed, "Teal jacket, fancy leash, and a kid for a shield? What's the game here?" My jacket was navy, but I didn't correct him, I didn't need to. Mike stepped closer, his zip tie dangling like a threat, saying, "This dog's a stunt, right? Some hipster prop to play victim." I felt Jamal tremble, and I wanted to roar, to tell them he deserved better than their scorn, but Valor's stillness anchored me, his training a mirror of my own, choose the moment, not the noise. A crowd gathered, phones multiplying, a woman shouting, "Let the kid go." And the app buzzed with notifications, incident at Zilker, black man and child harassed. My journal weighed heavy in my pocket, where I'd written about a day in '92 when a cop called me boy at 25, and now, decades later, it was Jamal's turn. I flicked my wrist, a 1-inch signal from our SEAL days, and Valor shifted, one step, placing himself between me and Mike, not growling, just creating a 3-foot zone of quiet power. Derek's grip on Jamal tightened, his voice sharp, "You think silence scares us, huh? That dog's just a trick." But his eyes betrayed him, darting to Valor, whose collar blinked steadily, capturing his every word. Ellen's body cam tilted, catching only half the scene, and she muttered, "Dang, this ain't right," her doubt a crack in their armor. A teenager yelled, "You're on live, man," and Derek spun, snapping, "Back off, kid." But the crowd grew, their phones a constellation of red lights, and I felt it, the shift, the moment when their words weren't just for us but for the world. My heart pounded, not with fear but with a quiet fire, pride for Jamal's courage, for Valor's restraint, for the strangers who saw us as more than a stereotype. Mike's hand hovered near his zip tie, his bravado faltering as Valor's eyes locked on him, not threatening, just measuring. I took a step forward, Valor matching me, Jamal still in Derek's grip, and the officers froze, their confidence splintering, because they'd expected us to shrink, not stand. Derek's smirk twisted, his voice low, "You're pushing it, man," And I met his gaze, my SEAL training humming through me, knowing this wasn't over, not when my nephew's eyes held a question I couldn't yet answer. Why us? Why now? Why always? My heart thundered as Derek Holt's grip on Jamal's arm tightened, his sneer carving a line of contempt across his face, but I held my ground, the 5-foot leash between me and Valor a lifeline of control in the chaos of Zilker Park, where the crowd's phones glowed like fireflies, capturing every word, every move, as if this moment could rewrite the rules of justice. I'm Marcus Reynolds, a black man who'd faced death in SEAL missions, but nothing tested me like this. Watching my nephew's eyes plead for safety while Derek, the lead officer, taunted, "You think that dog's gonna save you, huh? Looks like a prop for a sob story." His voice was a blade, sharpened by years of wielding power without question, and I saw it in his stance, the way he leaned into Jamal's fear, a man who'd climbed ranks by making others shrink. My journal, tucked in my pocket, held a memory from a 2003 mission in Fallujah, where I'd held fire to save a child caught in crossfire, and that same restraint burned through me now, keeping my voice silent, my hands steady. Valor, my 80-pound German shepherd, stood unmoved, his smart collar blinking faintly, recording Derek's words, a safeguard I'd built after too many encounters where truth needed a witness. Mike, the stocky officer, circled closer, his finger jabbing at Valor's leash, saying, "This ain't no pet store collar. You stealing military gear, man?" The accusation stung, not for its lie but for its assumption, that a black man like me couldn't earn something so precise, so earned. Jamal's voice quivered, "Uncle Marcus, tell Valor's yours," and I felt his courage, fragile but fierce, pushing through the fear that shouldn't burden a 12-year-old. I wanted to shout, to tell them Valor was forged in the same fires that shaped me, but my SEAL training whispered, "Wait, choose the moment." Ellen, the third officer, her body cam tilted, muttered, "That dog's too still. Gives me the creeps," her voice betraying a flicker of doubt, a crack in the wall of their certainty. The crowd swelled, a jogger shouting, "Let the kid go." While the community app I'd helped design buzzed with alerts, incident escalating, Zilker Park, black man and child targeted, pinging hundreds of phones across Austin. Derek's eyes narrowed, his grip on Jamal unyielding, and he leaned in, whispering, "You're real quiet, old man. That's supposed to make us back off?" I met his gaze, my silence a weapon honed over decades, remembering a night in Iraq when Valor's predecessor stood guard, saving us by listening, not lunging. My hand twitched, a 1-inch signal, thumb and finger crossing, a code from our SEAL days, and Valor responded, shifting one step to create a 3-foot buffer between me and Mike, not growling, just present, his body a silent declaration of boundaries. Mike froze, his zip tie dangling, and barked, "Call off your mutt, or we got problems." But his bravado wavered, his eyes darting to the crowd, where a dad with a stroller typed furiously on the app, his voice rising, "This is going live, y'all." I felt Jamal's arm tremble under Derek's grip, and my chest ached, not just for him but for the boy I'd been, stopped at 15-4 looking suspicious, my journal's pages heavy with that scar. Derek's smirk twisted, his voice louder, "What's the play here? Teal coat, kid, and a dog to play hero? I've seen this act before." My coat was navy, but I let it pass, my focus on Jamal, whose eyes held a question, "Why us?" And I whispered, "Stay strong, son," my voice a lifeline. Valor's ears tilted, catching Mike's hand inching toward his belt, and I felt the crowd's energy shift, a woman muttering, "They're picking a fight they can't win." Derek's past flashed through my mind, rumors I'd heard through community whispers, a cop who'd risen by targeting black kids, his record clean but his conscience stained, and now he stood before me, daring me to break. I didn't. My journal held another truth, restraint isn't weakness, it's strategy. Valor moved again, a half step, aligning himself to shield Jamal, his collar's faint beep a reminder that every word was captured, every threat preserved. Ellen stepped back, her body cam now off angle, and she said, "Mike, ease up," her voice low, a sign she sensed the tide turning. The app pinged again, 500 locals alerted, livestream at 10,000 views, and a teenager shouted, "You're done, man. World's watching." Derek's grip faltered, just a fraction, but he doubled down, yanking Jamal closer, saying, "You think a dog and some phones scare me? I run this park." His arrogance was his armor, but it was cracking, and I saw it, his need to dominate, born from a fear he'd never admit, a fear of losing control to a black man who wouldn't bend. My heart surged, not with rage but with resolve, pride for Jamal's stillness, for Valor's discipline, for the strangers who refused to look away. I flicked my wrist again, a 2-inch signal, and Valor sat, his eyes locked on Derek, not aggressive, just measuring, a silent promise that we weren't prey. Mike's hand dropped, his zip tie forgotten, and he muttered, "Dang, that dog's like a machine," his voice betraying awe. The crowd pressed closer, a man yelling, "You're on every screen in Austin," and I felt it, the weight of their eyes, not judging but witnessing, a power Derek couldn't touch. Jamal looked at me, his fear softening into trust, and I nodded, my journal's words echoing, "We don't fight to win, we stand to teach." Derek's smirk was gone, his hand still on Jamal but shaking now, and he growled, "You're testing me, man," but his voice was hollow, a man unraveling before a truth he couldn't outrank. I stood taller, Valor at my side, the leash slack, the crowd's phones a chorus, and I knew this wasn't just our fight, it was theirs, too, and we weren't alone. Derek Holt's hand shook as he held Jamal's arm, his smirk gone, replaced by a snarl that betrayed his unraveling, and I stood firm, the 5-foot leash linking me to Valor, a tether of truth in the heart of Zilker Park, where the crowd's phones burned bright, their lenses capturing a moment that felt like it could shatter the lies we'd all lived under too long. I'm Marcus Reynolds, a black man carved by Navy SEAL missions, and the weight of my past surged through me, not as anger but as clarity, because this wasn't just about me or Jamal, it was about every soul who'd been judged before they could speak. Derek's voice cracked, "You think you're untouchable, huh? That dog's just a trick, and you're just playing tough." But his eyes darted to Valor, whose 80-pound frame hadn't flinched, his smart collar blinking steadily, recording every syllable of Derek's desperation, a habit I'd kept since a 2004 mission in Mosul, where my word needed proof to outlast doubt. Jamal, my nephew, stood taller now, his fear softening into defiance, whispering, "Uncle Marcus, they don't know you," and his trust lit a fire in me, not to lash out but to stand as the man I'd promised him I'd be. My journal, heavy in my pocket, held a name, Lopez, a SEAL brother lost in that Mosul raid, whose last words were, "Hold the line, Marcus, not the fight," and those words guided me now, keeping my silence sharp, my hand still. Mike, the stocky officer, hovered near, his zip tie forgotten, muttering, "Freak, this guy's too calm." "Ain't right," his voice laced with unease, as if my restraint was a language he couldn't read. Ellen, her body cam now uselessly tilted, stepped closer, saying, "Derek, let the kid go," her words soft but heavy, a sign she saw the cliff they were teetering on. The community app buzzed louder, livestream at 50,000 views, Zilker incident trending, and a woman in the crowd shouted, "You're done, officer," her voice a spark in the growing roar. Derek's grip tightened, his face flushed, and I saw it. His fear, not of me but of losing the power he'd built on years of unchallenged bias, a cop who'd thrived by making black lives small, his record a trail of complaints buried under precinct politics. I reached into my jacket, slow and deliberate, pulling out a 2.5-inch SEAL K9 badge, its silver edge catching the light, and held it high, my voice steady, "Marcus Reynolds, retired Navy SEAL, K9 handler, 22 years, Fort Benning and Iraq." The crowd gasped, phones zooming in, and a veteran, gray-haired and grizzled, pushed forward, yelling, "That's Reynolds from Benning. Trained dogs that saved squads." His voice was a thunderclap, validating my truth, and I felt Lopez's ghost nod, his sacrifice alive in this moment. Derek's eyes widened, his hand loosening on Jamal, but he snarled, "A badge don't mean nothing here," and shoved my nephew, a desperate bid to reclaim control. That was his mistake. My heart raced, not with panic but with purpose, and I gave a 1-inch hand signal, fingers crossed twice, and Valor moved, a 0.6-second blur of precision, his shoulder striking Derek's hip, sending him sprawling 5 feet back, not a scratch on him, just his pride shattered. The crowd erupted, a teenager screaming, "Did you see that dog?" while the app pinged, 100,000 views, Valor Vigil. Valor stood over Derek, not growling, just watching, his collars beep a quiet promise that justice was listening. Jamal ran to me, his arms around my waist, whispering, "You're a hero, uncle," and I held him, my chest tight with pride for his resilience, for the boy who'd seen fear and chosen hope. Mike backed away, hands up, muttering, "Dang, I didn't sign up for this," his bravado gone, his eyes on Valor, who'd returned to my side, leash slack, mission complete. Ellen's face softened, her body cam now off, and she said, "I didn't know, sir," her words a confession, not an excuse, and I saw her struggle, a cop caught between duty and truth. Derek scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of rage, shouting, "You'll regret this, Reynolds. You and that mutt." But his voice was hollow, drowned by the crowd's chant, "Let them be," led by the veteran, whose eyes met mine, a silent salute to a shared past. My journal's pages flashed through my mind, a 1998 entry about a black kid I couldn't save from a cop's ego, and I vowed Jamal wouldn't be another scar. The app buzzed again, 200,000 views, Austin stands with Reynolds, and a woman, tears in her eyes, shouted, "We see you, Marcus." I felt their gaze, not as judgment but as armor, a community refusing to let us fall. Derek's hand shook, his authority a fading echo, and I saw his truth. A man who'd built his life on control, now facing a black man who didn't need to raise his voice to win. My badge gleamed in my hand, not a trophy but a reminder of the lives I'd saved, the lines I'd held, and I tucked it away, my silence louder than Derek's threats. Jamal's hand found mine, his voice steady, "They can't hurt us now, can they?" And I shook my head, my heart swelling with a quiet vow to teach him strength, not fear. Valor sat beside me, his eyes on the crowd, not Derek, as if he knew the real power wasn't in the fight but in the witness. The crowd pressed closer, phones a sea of light, and I felt it, the truth breaking free, not just for us but for every soul they'd tried to dim, and I stood, leash in hand, ready for whatever came next, because we weren't just surviving, we were rewriting the story they thought they owned. The air still hummed with the echo of Valor's takedown, but it was the crowd's roar in Zilker Park that followed me home, their phones a constellation of truth that lit up the world, and now, days later, I sat at my kitchen table, my journal open, the 5-foot leash coiled beside me, trying to make sense of a moment that had outgrown us all. I'm Marcus Reynolds, a black man who'd walked through war zones, but nothing prepared me for the tidal wave that hit when our confrontation went viral. The video of Derek Holt's fall racking up 3 million views in 24 hours, hashtag Valor Vigil trending on every platform, a beacon for a nation hungry for justice. My heart swelled with pride for Jamal, my 12-year-old nephew, who'd faced fear and found strength, but it ached too, because fame wasn't my fight, I'd only wanted to walk free. The community app we'd built buzzed relentlessly, incident hits CNN, Austin demands accountability, and I felt the weight of eyes, not just Austin's but the country's, seeing me not as a threat but as a truth-teller. Derek, the officer whose sneer had sparked it all, was a ghost now, his name whispered in precinct halls, his career unraveling after a leaked memo revealed his history, dozens of complaints from black families, buried by a system that valued badges over lives. My journal held a new entry, words for Jamal, "You're not their story, you're ours," because I feared the spotlight might steal his childhood, just as bias had tried to steal his safety. The police held a press conference, their captains tied too tight, claiming, "No misconduct occurred, this was a misunderstanding," but the crowd outside chanted, "Valor showed us," and I saw it on my phone, 500,000 views of their denial, drowned by a truth too loud to silence. A new policy emerged, dubbed Valor Protocol, mandating de-escalation training in 12 Texas precincts, and I felt Lopez's ghost, my fallen SEAL brother, nod from somewhere beyond, his lesson of restraint now etched in law. But it was the community that moved me most. A mural rose in East Austin, 40 feet tall, Valor shielding Jamal, painted by kids who'd seen the video and refused to forget, its caption, "Stand still, stand strong," a mantra for a city waking up. Jamal, eyes bright, joined a youth program I hadn't planned, Eyes Like Valor, teaching kids to observe, not react, in a rec center packed with 150 teens, black, brown, and white, learning to see bias before it struck. My chest tightened, pride battling worry, because Jamal was becoming a leader, but at 12, he shouldn't have to. Derek's demotion came quietly, his badge stripped of rank, and I heard through the grapevine he'd stared at the mural, silent, his arrogance replaced by shame, a man who'd thought power was forever now facing its limits. I wrote a public letter, not for the cameras but for Jamal, published in the Austin Chronicle, saying, "We don't fight to break, we stand to build," and it spread, 10,000 shares, a call to heal, not hate. A restorative justice workshop sprang up, my idea but led by Ellen, the officer who'd wavered that day, now teaching cops to listen, her voice trembling as she said, "I saw a man, not a threat, and I failed him first." Her honesty stung, but it healed too, 50 officers attending, their notebooks open, a start I hadn't dared hope for. The app pinged again, mural unveiling tonight, 1,000 RSVP'd, and I went, Valor at my side, Jamal holding my hand, the crowd parting not in fear but in reverence, their candles flickering like promises. A girl, maybe 15, read a poem, Valor's eyes see what we hide, and I choked back tears, remembering a 1995 mission where I'd lost a dog to save a village, his silence my first lesson in sacrifice. Mike, the other officer, resigned, leaving a note at the mural, "I'm sorry I looked away," and I felt no victory, only sorrow for a man who'd chosen fear over truth. The workshop grew, now in 5 cities, and Jamal spoke at one, his voice steady. "My uncle taught me to stand, but Valor taught me to wait," earning applause that shook me, because my nephew was rewriting our story. My journal filled with new names. Kids from the program, artists from the mural, strangers who'd emailed me, "You changed how I see," and I realized this wasn't my fight alone, it was theirs, too. Derek's face flashed on a news clip, his eyes hollow, a man who'd thought he owned the park now owned only regret, and I wondered if he'd ever see the mural, ever feel its weight. The app buzzed, #ValorVigil hits 5 million views, and a national network aired Jamal's words, my letter scrolling beneath, a message that racism wasn't just our burden but everyone's to dismantle. I stood at the mural's base, Valor's leash slack, and felt the city breathe with us, not against us, a shift I'd never written in my journal but lived in my bones. Jamal tugged my sleeve, asking, "Uncle, can we keep going?" And I nodded, my heart full, because the ripples weren't just change. They were a promise that our stand, our silence, our truth could outlast any badge, any bias, any fear, and I knew we'd carry it forward, together, unbowed. The 5-foot leash hangs on my wall now, its titanium clip catching the light like a medal from a war I never chose, but as I stand before the Valor Academy's gates in Memphis, my journal in hand, I feel the pulse of a legacy that's grown beyond that day in Zilker Park, where Valor's silence outshone Derek Holt's sneer, and Jamal's courage lit a spark that still burns. I'm Marcus Reynolds, a black man shaped by Navy SEAL missions, and my heart carries the weight of every step since. A journey from confrontation to creation, from a single stand to a movement that's changed lives. Jamal, my nephew, now 17, stands beside me, his podcast, Valor's Vision, reaching 3 million listeners, his voice a beacon for kids who faced the same shadows we did, and I see him, not as the scared 12-year-old Derek gripped, but as a leader who's turned pain into purpose. The Academy, its 20-foot statue of valor guarding a child, teaches 300 youth to protect, not strike, their motto, see before you act, a lesson I learned in Iraq, where my dog's paws saved a squad, a memory etched in my journal beside Lopez's name, my SEAL brother gone too soon. The mural in East Austin, 40 feet of valor's resolve, draws thousands yearly, its words, stand still, stand strong, a hymn for a city that's learned to listen. Derek's fall was quiet, his rank stripped, but he came to me last year, his voice low, handing me a letter. I was wrong, Reynolds. I'm trying to change, and I saw a man broken, not by my hand but by the truth he couldn't outrun, his past a trail of black lives he'd dimmed, now facing a mirror he couldn't break. I kept the letter, not for him but for Jamal, to show that even stone can crack under time's weight. The community app, now global with 2 million users, pings hourly, bias reported, Chicago, support dispatched, a network of eyes like Valor's, guarding truth across borders. I launched a mentorship, Hold the Line, for 100 teens, teaching them to journal their stories, and one girl, Tasha, wrote, "Mr. Marcus, you taught me my voice doesn't need volume," her words echoing my 1987 entry, "When a cop's glare silenced me at 18. A scholarship, Valor's Shield, grew to 20 students, their essays on restraint over rage bringing me to tears, recalling a 1992 mission where I lost a dog to save a village, his stillness my greatest teacher. Ellen, the officer who hesitated, leads workshops in 25 cities, her badge now a bridge, saying, "Valor showed me what courage looks like," and I nodded when she called, her growth a seed from our stand. Mike's apology, left at the mural, became a training tool, read to 1,000 cadets, a warning that silence can betray as much as action. A festival, Valor's Day, drew 10,000 last month, Jamal emceeing, his voice clear, "My uncle didn't fight, he stood, and that's why we're here," his words on MSNBC, a call that shook me, because he's become the man I hoped to be. My journal holds a new page, for Tasha, Malik, every kid I mentor, their names beside Lopez's, a chain of truths linking past to future. Derek's letter sits in a drawer, a reminder that change is possible, but it's the festival's closing song, led by Tasha, "We See, We Stand," that stays with me, its melody carrying Zilker's echo. The app pinged, "Scholarship Gala, 2,000 attendees," and I spoke there, Valor at my side, his first silver now, saying, "This isn't my legacy, it's ours," my voice breaking, because I never wanted fame, only freedom. Jamal's podcast aired my story, his question, "Uncle, what kept you standing?" And I said, "You, and every kid like you," my heart full, knowing he'd carry this forward. A new mural rose in Memphis, Valor's eyes watching a crowd, captioned, "Truth needs no noise," and I touched it, feeling every dog, every soldier, every kid I couldn't save, their spirits alive in its paint. As I reflect on this journey, I see it wasn't the fight that defined us, but the pause, Valor's, mine, Jamal's. I learned that restraint is power, that silence can speak louder than shouts, that a community's eyes can shift the world. I learned to stand, not to win, but to teach, to show that racism's weight can't break those who hold each other up. And I ask you, if you were in a similar situation, with elements like racial discrimination, social political issues, police action, how would you approach it to achieve the best possible outcome? Would you stand, speak, or listen? Would you build, like we did, a legacy that lives beyond the moment, a truth that outlasts the fight? I look at Jamal, at Valor, at the kids running through the academy's gates, and I know our answer: stand still, stand strong, and never stop seeing.